Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Today we have I know I say this every time, but this really is a remarkable game. It's a clan battle on the North American server, and we're watching it from the perspective of Jet Waters here in the British Tier 10 battleship, the Thunderer. The Thunderer is basically a Conqueror with 18-inch guns, and would almost certainly never have been built, even if it hadn't been for the fact that battleships had been rendered obsolete by aircraft carriers. There's a reason why most British World War II battleships were on with either 14 or 15-inch guns, because Britain didn't actually have a steelworks. Surprising though this may sound, given Britain's reputation as a major naval power, but we had all kinds of steelworks that were capable of producing 14 and 15-inch gun barrels. Only one steelworks that was capable of producing 16-inch gun barrels, and exactly none that were capable of producing 18-inch gun barrels, and the one that was capable of producing 16-inch gun barrels was pretty much working at capacity. There were other reasons, of course. If you look at the King George V class of battleships, which were armed with 10 14-inch guns, they could have been armed with 15-inch guns, but weren't for a number of reasons. First, there weren't enough 15-inch gun barrels to go around, and it would have meant an 18-month delay in construction, which would have meant no new battleships for the Royal Navy until 1942, and this at a time when the Royal Navy really could have used a lot more new battleships. And also, the stipulations of the London Naval Treaty of 1936 said that you couldn't build new battleships with bigger than 14-inch guns, although there was an opt-out clause, but the Admiralty was reluctant to opt out of the treaty because it didn't want to encourage other people to opt out of the treaty and start building battleships with 15 and 16-inch guns. So 14-inch guns for the King George V class. And of course everybody else just went ahead and built battleships with 15 and 16-inch guns anyway, so, that's Britain for you. Sticking to treaty stipulations even when nobody else is, and we'd continue to do it with the engine design, the multi-fuel engine on the Chieftain. Sticking to a multi-fuel engine because that's what NATO had agreed to when everybody else was realising that multi-fuel engines were shit and were putting proper diesel engines in their tanks instead. But no, no, we agreed to a multi-fuel engine, so a multi-fuel engine is what we will have. Oh, Britain, don't ever change. You know, in many ways you could argue that my being as crap as I undeniably am is me simply being patriotic and living up to the proud traditions of the British military. Ah well, anyway. Meanwhile, Jet Waters unleashes his first salvo of the day with his 18-inch guns at the enemy Puerto Rico. Now the distance is extreme and the Puerto Rico is moving kind of quickly, but all the same I think he might have overled those shots a little. Not that it really matters because the Puerto Rico's turning in anyway, so all of those shots are going to miss. By the way, for those of you who are watching this on a PC monitor or any kind of screen with a high enough resolution, I do encourage you to pay attention to chat. Straight away you can tell this is a North American server replay, as the two teams are bantering with each other in a way that only really seems to happen on the North American server. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen on the EU server, but it happens just about every time on the North American server. They seem to be a lot more relaxed over there. You know, for a minute there I was going to ask if it was the same on the North American World of Tanks server, but, well, there's no cross-team chat in World of Tanks anymore, is it? It got turned off because everybody was too toxic. Oh well. In other news, the Des Moines on the right over there is about to wish he was playing something else. Oh shit, man, look at that. Yeah, so, deep water torpedoes from the Yu Yang. I think we can hazard a reasonably confident guess that there's an enemy Tier 10 Pan-Asian destroyer somewhere relatively close. And yet, despite that awesome paddling that the first Des Moines just received, neither of those two Des Moines appear to be in any rush to activate their radar. Wait, there it goes. And yep, sure enough, there he is. Well, it's a bit like shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted, but better late than never, I suppose. The only problem is, only one of the Des Moines is actually shooting at him. So not that much better late than never. The Des Moines who just got torpedoed is now public enemy number 1 for anybody with a firing solution on him. And he is going to die very, very quickly. In fact, any second now, I think, with the salvo coming in from the enemy Des Moines over there. But yeah, there he goes. Now pay attention to the second Des Moines, because you're about to see a fail of epic proportions. That Moskva over there is currently targeting jet waters. In fact, a whole bunch of ships are currently targeting jet waters, but watch what this Des Moines does. It's pretty obvious that the Moskva is there, with his guns pointing in this direction, and he's firing armor piercing. Watch the Des Moines. At the moment, the Moskva is targeting jet waters, but he's angled, so he's proven to be a reasonably tough nut to crack, and the Des Moines, with the recent cruiser armor changes, if angled, is also quite a difficult target for a Russian big cruiser like the Stalingrad or the Moskva, but only if it's angled. I'm going to have to grab control of the camera here just so we can witness the Des Moines' suicide in all of its glory. I mean, why would you broadside a Moskva with its 220mm guns at that kind of range in anything, let alone a cruiser? Jet Waters is running out of teammates on this flank. A minute ago there were two Des Moines, a Thunderer and a Gearing. Now there's just a Thunderer and a Gearing. And the Gearing's going to have to be really careful, because there's a Des Moines and a Moskva over there, and they're radar cruisers, so he has to at least try to stay out of radar range, which means that he's limited to firing torpedoes every couple of minutes, and all of those torpedoes just missed, so to all intents and purposes, for the immediate future, Jet Waters is basically on his own. Now, while a heavy cruiser like the Des Moines is perfectly capable of bow-tanking the armor-piercing shells of a big old cruiser like a Moskva or a Stalingrad, it cannot bow-tank the armor-piercing shells of a battleship like the Thunderer, the Yamato, the Georgia, or the Ohio. The Des Moines would have been better off coming in angled instead of turning nose in there. He would have then at least had a chance of bouncing some of those armor-piercing shells on his armoured belt. But his nose, which is 27mm thick, these 18-inch shells cut right through it like a hot knife through butter. Then again, he was eating large amounts of high explosive damage from Jet Waters there, which is probably what prompted him to turn nose in, and of course Jet Waters was probably planning on that to happen, which is why he switched to armor piercing when he did. Either way, he's taking care of the Des Moines, so just the Moskva, who's given him a broadside to shoot at. That's very generous of him. You did see what just happened to the Des Moines, right? And now the rear turrets. There we go. Yep. Well, that was fairly predictable. He does not have a huge amount of health left, and there's some extremely annoying shots coming in from the Yu Yang, as well as a torpedo. Oh, this is going to kill him. Yeah. Oh well, never mind. Bloody hell, Jingles, that was short. Well, this isn't actually about Jet Waters. It's really more about his two surviving teammates. Up to the north, the Salem is being pushed pretty hard by Puerto Rico and another enemy Des Moines. The Gearing is of course undetected and is attempting, but failing, to torpedo the Grosser Kurfürst. The enemy team outnumber Jet Waters' surviving teammates by 2-1. They have a 300-point lead. They control two of the caps, and they're in the process of taking the third. Let's go and watch the Salem. His back is quite literally up against the wall here. He's focusing his fire on the Des Moines, which is the smart thing to do because he can kill the Des Moines, and he has killed the Des Moines, so one less ship to worry about, and also one less radar for the Gearing to worry about. But now he has to somehow find a way of taking care of the Puerto Rico. The Salem finished off the Des Moines with high explosive, and he switched to armor piercing for the Puerto Rico, but the Puerto Rico, realising that with the death of the Des Moines he was going to be the next target, started angling in. So the Salem's armor piercing is almost completely ineffective. I would really like to see this Salem switch back to high explosive quickly, because he's not going to do any damage to the Puerto Rico, other than hitting his superstructure, which looks like it's becoming damage saturated. Then again, I think the Puerto Rico is firing armor piercing back at him. The Salem has switched back to high explosive. Okay, good. He set a fire, which the Puerto Rico extinguished. Now, of course, the damage control is still going to be active, so no further fires can be set until it expires. And the Salem literally cannot back up anymore. He's still piling the high explosive in. He's not getting any further fires, though. The Puerto Rico is still firing arm piercing at him. It's not going to hurt him. I mean, it might do minor amounts of damage. And I think at this point the Salem has decided, screw it, I'm going to go for the RAM. And initially it looked like the Puerto Rico was going to avoid it, but then he thought, well, you know what? If we both die, it's 2 against 1. And I like those odds, so he accepted the RAM. But accepting that RAM is going to have massive implications for the Puerto Rico's team, above and beyond the loss of a battle cruiser. Because the Puerto Rico's team have just lost their last 2 radar cruisers. Regardless of whether or not you think the Salem was way too slow switching to high explosive and could maybe have killed the Puerto Rico without having to die in the process, he did kill the Puerto Rico, and he killed the Des Moines right before that. And while the Yu Yang on the enemy team could have radar, he actually doesn't. He's elected to take the smoke generator consumable instead. So those 2 enemy ships are in the unenviable position of having to find and kill a gearing, and nobody has radar anymore. Then again, do they really need it? I mean, they are still more than 300 points ahead, and the gearing, while he is sending torpedoes across the map, although I doubt they've got the range to hit the Grosser Kurfürst, and he is attempting to flip as many caps as possible, the enemy team are flipping them back over just as quickly. Also, while the enemy team may not have radar, the gearing is having to flip caps in order to buy himself the time that he needs to try to salvage a win from this, and the process of flipping a capture point tells the enemy team where you are, radar or not. In fact, it's even worse than that, because if you look at the amount of points that both teams have, you look at the caps that both teams control, and you look at the amount of time remaining, it should be readily apparent that the gearing must be doing either one of 2 things. Either heading for Alpha and trying to flip it, or losing. That gearing pretty much has to try to flip A, because the Grosser Kurfürst is flipping every cap behind him as quickly as he captures them. Now, I don't know if the Yu Yang predicted that this is what the gearing had to be doing, or if he simply thought, well, there's an uncontested cap over there, I may as well grab it. Either are good, but the Yu Yang is there, and he has an 8,000 point health advantage over the gearing. Now, I'm really not quite sure what's going on here. The Yu Yang starts off firing armor piercing against an angled gearing. I know that 5-inch guns, if you don't have the IFHE skill, can struggle against certain parts of the gearing, which has 20mm, not 19mm of armor. But the armor piercing isn't going to do anything against an angled gearing. But the gearing's high explosive is ripping right through a completely unangled Yu Yang, who of course can't torpedo him because deep water torpedoes. It's kind of amusing, because he's been encouraged to use his torpedoes in chat. Holy shit, that was a lot of damage. That was a lot of damage. He's got the Yu Yang, but a salvo from the Grosser Kurfürst came across the map, bitch slapped the shit out of him and left him on 59 health. Luckily, he wasn't inside secondary gun battery range of the Grosser Kurfürst. Otherwise, well, the gearing would be dead and this match would be over. Despite having the benefit of the Yu Yang's own smoke screen, I think the gearing has decided better safe than sorry, dropped a bit of a panic smoke of his own, which is all good. You know, it's all good. He was in immediate danger of getting shot at again by the Grosser Kurfürst. He should be quite safe now. And I think the Grosser Kurfürst is in fact heading south to Cap Circle Bravo to flip it. Because right now the gearing has managed to gain a 2-cap advantage. And despite killing the Yu Yang and getting the points benefit from that, they're still well over 200 points behind. And yes, the Grosser Kurfürst is heading south. So he is going to flip Bravo. And that is absolutely the best thing for the Grosser Kurfürst to do. He doesn't want to go up to Alpha and fight the gearing, because while he can kill the gearing with a single hit from a secondary gun battery, there's a lot of islands up around Alpha with some very narrow channels between them that are just begging to be flooded with torpedoes, which is more or less exactly what the gearing's doing. I think he must have the Mark 17 torpedoes with a 16.5 kilometer range. They're still almost certainly not going to hit the Grosser Kurfürst. But you can imagine just exactly how anxious this gearing must be, because he does only have 59 health left, and yes, he's just managed to flip Alpha, but the Grosser Kurfürst is going to flip Bravo. And that 2-cap points advantage isn't actually an advantage unless you can turn it into a points lead, and the Grosser Kurfürst isn't going to let him turn it into a points lead because he's about to start flipping Bravo. So try to put yourself in the shoes of both of these captains. What does the Grosser Kurfürst need to do in order to win? And what does the Gearing need to do in order to win? Beyond just, one of them killing the other, which is obviously going to be a win. But the Gearing's not going to want to get close to the Grosser Kurfürst, because if he gets spotted, he's dead. No question about it. And the Grosser Kurfürst doesn't want to get close to the Gearing because he's got a massive health advantage and a massive points advantage, and he doesn't want to just throw that away to a bunch of Gearing torpedoes. So looking at the caps, looking at the points, and looking at the amount of time remaining, all that Grosser Kurfürst has to do to win is flip Bravo, and he is in the process of doing that, and then stay away from the Gearing, because he's just over 100 points away from winning, and with 2 caps he'll have those points in a very short period of time. There he is. He's doing exactly the right thing. A lot of people in this situation would have tried to chase down the Gearing, would have tried to predict that the Gearing was going to go for Charlie, which is exactly what the Gearing is doing, but he would have risked dying to the Gearing's torpedoes. Battleships chasing after destroyers, it usually doesn't end well for them. The Gearing, on the other hand, must flip Charlie, which is what he's doing, but that is no guarantee of a win. Both teams now have 1 cap each. The Grosser Kurfürst has flipped Bravo. The Gearing still retains control of Alpha, and he's flipping Charlie. But even if the Gearing does flip Charlie, and he is about to flip Charlie, that 2 cap point advantage is not going to be enough, because the Grosser Kurfürst is only 79 points away from winning, and is 150 points ahead. In the just under 4 minutes of the match remaining, that single cap is going to result in a win for the Grosser Kurfürst. So now the Gearing has to flip Bravo as well, and that means getting close to the enemy battleship, who, let us not forget, is a Grosser Kurfürst and has a terrifying array of secondary gun batteries. If that Grosser Kurfürst is just lurking on the other side of the island there, and proximity detects the Gearing as he slips over the boundary of the cap circle, all he has to do is catch the slightest hint of the Gearing, and 1 hit from a secondary gun is going to kill the Gearing long before any torpedoes that he fires reaches its target. But what choice does the Gearing have? In fact, I'm not even sure he can do it. 969 points. 31 points away from a win. 972 points. No sign of the Grosser Kurfürst, who has probably hightailed it to the south, keeping that island between himself and the Gearing, knowing that he's unspotted, knowing exactly what the Gearing must be doing, or if he's not doing, he's basically lost anyway. 987 points. 990 points. 993, 996, 999. The Gearing has done it. And then, plot twist, he's not taking the cap, he's just contesting it, which must mean that the Grosser Kurfürst is still inside the cap circle and has to be right on the other side of that island. He pops his smoke, but I'm pretty sure he's also being hydroed. And the Grosser Kurfürst hydro has a 6-kilometre ship detection range. That Grosser Kurfürst must be backing up right now, coming around the side of this island to give his guns something to shoot at. And, well, the Gearing couldn't launch any torpedoes at that angle anyway. Not that it would do him any good, because gunfire travels a lot faster than torpedoes, but it doesn't matter. He's done it. The 2 caps were enough for the Gearing to drag his team kicking and screaming to 1,000 points, 1 point ahead of the enemy team before that Grosser Kurfürst came around the corner and bitch-slapped him into oblivion. Sadly, this was just a replay file. No post-battle results were attached. So we don't get to see how many medals and awards the Gearing earned, but quite frankly, if he didn't get all of them, I think he was being cheated. Jetwaters, thank you so much for sending this replay in. I was going to say I've never seen a result quite like this, but literally right after I looked at this battle, I saw another one from the EU server with exactly the same result, 1,000 points to 999. But that battle wasn't nearly as tense as this one. So this is the one that I'm showing. Congratulations to everyone involved, especially Wild Bill in the gearing. Keep a hold of that guy, right? Don't let him flip clans. And commiserations to everybody on the enemy team. It really couldn't have been closer. I mean, a 1-point difference. That really was a great battle to watch, and I hope everybody else enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed providing the commentary. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.